year, and we've attracted a lot of new industry. Just in the first 6 months of the fiscal year, our numbers are up 16%. And also, since we met last year, 12 million additional square feet, that's 12 million additional square feet of distribution centers have either been built, come online, or planned. So that's the brief update, and I'm happy to be here, and thanks for having us.
You want to touch on the 07, just while you're here, because we're here on the 06.
Sure. I would like to. We have two projects that we want to complete this year. Of course, the Container Berth 8 project, which you all have put funding in for the past 3 years. We have gotten to the very end of that project. It's a $109 million project. This year, we have a request in the big budget for general obligation bonds that will finish it off. It's a request of 19. What's the number here? Let me see. I was prepared and then I wasn't prepared. Let's see. $19.1 million, that's correct. And that will finish up the funding for Container Berth 8. We expect to bring the first phase of that online next month. And so containers will be coming in and out of Georgia as a result of the great work here starting next month. The second project that we also want to finish off this year is the deepening project in Brunswick. That deepening project, we're requesting in the governor's budget $3.2 million in general obligation bonds. When complete, 100% of the vessels now calling all ports across the country that are dealing with roll-on, roll-off cargo will be able to call on that port, and that will really move us forward and advance economic opportunities and jobs for Georgia. So those are the two requests. They've finished off two major projects, and we'll be back when you're ready to talk about that budget.
That'll be in a couple of weeks. So
okay.
We're glad to have you. So have a safe trip home.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Forestry, I think, is here.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I take it you'd like me to address only the 06 amended, correct? Okay. What I have is a tracking sheet, has about, I guess, 6 items on it. The first one is the workers' compensation premium difference, which I think you've probably already seen a number of times. Fairly straightforward. It's an increase to reflect the increase in premiums. The second one is realigning funds from management and protection and seedling, nursery, and tree improvement programs, which are the 4 programs that we have, and it's moving funds among those. And that recommendation, I think, out of OPB was to approve those changes. The next one is for $131,000 is for 15 additional firefighter positions. These are not new positions. It's simply funding to fill existing positions. We had in 2004 about 530 people in protection. This last year we've had about 488, a pretty substantial reduction, and it's actually been going down for about 10 years. We don't need to fill all those positions. We're finding ways to be a lot more efficient than we were. We need to fill about 15 of them. And so what that 131 is a 1/4 of the year funding for 15 positions. That's what that amounts to. Item number 4 is funding for ongoing and deferred maintenance for firefighting equipment. The 876,222 is a partial funding of the total amount of maintenance we've identified. We went through and looked at all of our equipment, identified exactly what needed to be done in terms of maintenance to get the equipment up to standard across the entire agency, and it came up to something north of twice that number. But we can't do it all in 1 year. And so we're not going to pretend to. This 876 is a partial funding of that amount. The next item is on number 5, I think, on the list, is for commission-wide upgrades to communications equipment. You may or may not be aware the Forestry Commission has a statewide communications capability with repeater towers. We have radios on all of our equipment, both for safety as well as control purposes during the course of fires. It's not the 800 megahertz system that the state has been trying to develop simply because the 800 megahertz system does not work. It doesn't. Those frequencies won't get into the woods. It won't penetrate the leaves and into the woods, so it doesn't work for us. So we're having to maintain a separate system. We have gone a number of years without spending any real money on maintenance, and that's what this $500,000 is for. Lastly, there are 18 pieces of equipment, actually substantially more than that, but we've got 18 we've identified that we want to replace this year that have over 135,000 miles. And that's what the last amount is for the replacement of those vehicles.
Any questions from the committee?
I would just like to say that I don't see how you operate as you do. I know that a few years ago, people still cleaning the offices themselves.
We're still doing that.
Done away with maintenance.
We're actually building our own offices now, so.
No, but I would say sometimes I hope you don't cut yourself too short. And I know the budget anxiety has had a hard time, but I know the forestry is certainly doing their part for the last 18 years. Cutting the budget, I think you can really cut lost a lot of help, a lot of maintenance and equipment, and I hope
We
you
have.
will get the equipment you need. It looks like
We're making a real effort to prioritize our needs, and we've actually found a few ways to save even some more money, but we've ended up redirecting that back to some of the priorities we've identified, and we're trying our best. Thank you for your comments.
Commissioner, the 18 vehicles you're talking about, is it, I know they have 135,000 miles. Is that minimum you feel like you can get by with is 18?
That's the minimum. Feel like I can for this year. Our standard is varies depending on the type of equipment, but for this type of vehicle, we feel that once we get to that type of mileage, that it's just not reliable enough to be, ready to go all the time.
Well, I guess the question is rephrase it. To finish out the year, you're saying you need to replace a minimum of 18 to finish out to...
Finish out 06. That's correct. And we have a targeted list that's larger than that as we go into 07.
Anybody have any questions? Yes.
Have we completely eliminated the fire towers, or are they all pretty well abandoned?
No, they're not all abandoned. We have 3 that we're actually operating on a as-needed basis. The people that were regularly up in all the towers around the state, we've replaced that with with an aerial detection system. But we have 3 locations where we do have people that regularly go into the fire towers.
Yeah, this equipment, communication-wide equipment, does that tie into the fire detection part of this?
That's 95% of the purpose of that equipment. That's correct. It's used for management purposes, but if we didn't have the protection role, then we really wouldn't need that type of equipment.
Do you visualize eliminating all the towers? Are they still useful?
We have a number of our towers for sale. There's a reversionary interest on the land under most of those towers. And you may find it interesting that we have sold several of the towers 3 times. Once we sell them, We didn't get paid. Once we sell them, they find out that it's too expensive to take them down. And so it's a little bit of an albatross for us. And we have some of our maintenance money, frankly, going just to keep them up and safe.
Any other questions? Yes, sir. What are you down
I just wanted you to know I was one of those that purchased one of those towers several years ago. And it did take me a while to get it moved, several years. I was about to decide I was going to have to buy the land it was on to get any benefit, but I had a friend of mine in construction help me move it. But I just wanted you to know they make great deer stands.
Oh, I bet. You didn't leave it at the original height, I take it.
About half.
Okay.
I can just about see all over my farm with that.
I bet.
Any other questions? What are you down there?
Number 6. Yes, sir, thank you. On replacing the 18 vehicles, that's an average of about $30,000 per vehicle?
That's maybe the average, but they range in price from about $79,000 to $24,000. So it's quite a range in the vehicle
So
price.
these are like equipment trucks?
Some of them are equipment trucks.
Not cars with lights on them?
No, no, none, no,
Forestry Fire Ranger goes to,
no.
and it's got an extinguisher in the back. These are fire trucks.
These are trucks that have, even if it's a 3/4 ton pickup truck, it's got a water tank that we fabricate in our shop as a first response vehicle. So these are firefighting pieces of equipment.
So does this cost go towards that fabrication?
No, we do the fabrication separate.
In
These are
addition
just,
to the cost of the vehicle?
that's right. We cover that, through another. We've got a fabrication shop there on site, and basically the cost, of course, is for labor and the materials.
Contacted Ford to say maybe they can give us a bargain on a few
Doing the fabrication?
on some of the vehicles.
I'm sorry. State your question again. Yeah, everything is bid. That's correct.
Is that everybody? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. We have Bill Miller here. The World Congress Senate
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'm Bill Miller, Director of Administrative Services for the Georgia World Congress Center Authority. I want to bring apologies from our Executive Director, Dan Graveline. He had a scheduling conflict today, and since we didn't have anything in the FY06 supplemental, I told him I thought Representative Rogers would excuse him from being here. But I'm glad to be here with you today, and if there is anything that you'd like to ask me about our operations or our budget for we do have something in the FY07 budget. We're excited about that, but I can always address that at the appropriate time.
Any questions for Bill? Anybody? Thank you for being here.
Thank you, sir.
We have a special guest here from the Hurley Foundation, and I'm going to let them come up and introduce themselves and give us a brief discussion on what they do and how they do it. And we're glad to have y'all. I think you're from Savannah, too.
Mr. Chairman, committee members, my name is Jacek Siri. I am an economist and a professor with the University of Georgia. 1 year ago, the governor called upon me to serve on the board of trustees of the Hurley Foundation, and I'm very happy and proud to do it because Hurley has a major potential to add to Georgia's economy. I would like to thank you for this opportunity to tell you about what Hurley is doing and how it is evolving. And with this, I would like to introduce Dr. Bill Brandich. Dr. Brandich comes to us from Kentucky, where he served as commissioner for the new economy, and a very successful one. He came to Savannah, Georgia to retire, and we have been very lucky to persuade him to postpone his retirement and work with us for the Hurley Foundation for the state of Georgia. Dr. Brandich.
Thank you. Yeah, I say thank you, Mr. Chairman, for this opportunity. The Hurley Foundation was created in 1938 in honor of Dr. Charles Hurley, who was a professor at the University of Georgia, and he's the father of the paper industry in the Southeast. He probably had a greater impact on the economy in Georgia and in the Southeast than any other individual has. The purpose for the Hurley Foundation, it was created, it's a state-owned corporation, is economic development. They started out working in the pulp and paper world, helping that industry and develop new products. It's more of a development than a research organization. We have equipment we call paper technology, paper processing technology, where we can do the development for a company, whereby they don't have to build a building, hire the people, or buy the equipment. We have all that for them and add a great deal of value and cut much of the cost in the development or finding out whether or not they can manufacture their new technology. But over the last few decades, Hurley hasn't been doing a lot of paperwork with the pulp and paper industry. It's been mostly with companies that are applying other materials to that particular technology. So as we look at the global competition and what's happening in manufacturing in this country, we determined, the previous board did with Hurley, is to have me do a business plan for them, and we created a transition and growth plan for Hurley that would expand its capabilities not only in the forest products world, but in manufacturing in general and advanced materials. Most manufacturers, if they're developing new product lines, are going to be doing it in the advanced materials world. And that's getting manufacturing. I've been to, God, I don't know how many meetings the last 5 years across the country. And a lot of people are scared, and there are some good reasons for being concerned about our manufacturing industry. We've all read about Ford, certainly, and General Motors are right behind them. But today, if you're in manufacturing, if your product becomes a commodity, it's going overseas in all probability. You're going to have a hard time staying in business. The only way to stay in business or to save our industry in the United States is through innovation. We've got to continuously innovate, enhance existing products, or come up with new products and technology. And that's what we're up to at Hurley. We've strategically partnered with Georgia Tech, Savannah College of Art and Design, the industrial design people. We'll be working with the University of Georgia and eventually with the medical college. And we have a number of companies here in Georgia we're working with. But innovation today is not as it used to be. It was much simpler, more involved in engineering. Today it's design, architecture, and engineering. It's combining the right brain with the left brain. And that helps us identify new applications for a company's technologies, new markets that they might never have thought of before. So we're building that capability at Hurley now. And we've, on top of that, we've worked with quite a few of our companies in the state and across the world to identify what it is they really need to help them to innovate, in particular our manufacturers. And we call it a gap, and it is those facilities, equipment, and people that cover the range of design, architecture, and engineering. Not only shows them how to manufacture something and make sure that it is economical to do that, but to help them to find markets and add new technologies to the technologies that they have. The organizations like Hurley, and I've done this in Florida, and Kansas, Kansas City, and Kentucky. They are owned by the state, and their purpose is economic development. And if they can't have a significant impact on the state's economy, they really shouldn't exist. And I took a long, hard look at Hurley, and I've never seen an organization quite like this at any state level. And I never created one like this. You're allowed to really get in bed with the manufacturer. In those states that are going to be most successful in this new economy, and in the last 25 years, a number of states have spent billions of dollars building this economy. The most successful are those who blur the lines between government, academia, and the business community. We have to assume some of the risk with our manufacturers and help them along the way. And those states doing that they've proven that it can be done, and it does work. We started in the early 80s doing this, and we set up a lot of programs, venture capital programs, entrepreneurial programs, seed capital, institutions, and a number of technological areas, industry areas. But we've gotten to the point now where we know how to build industry clusters. And that's where the big payoff is in economic development, when you can build an industry cluster. A good example is the wine industry in California. You have the wine growers, the wineries, you have transportation, finance, workforce, all the things that go with it. Automobile industry with their suppliers would be another one. But I firmly believe, with our strategic partners, we in Georgia can build an industry cluster in advanced materials that almost all of our manufacturers can take advantage of. And within 5 years, Hurley ought to have a highly significant impact on the economy of the state of Georgia. Moreover, it ought to be able to generate enough revenue by assuming risk with these companies to have a pretty good royalty stream at that time. And all the companies we've talked to, all the way to some big ones that you know of, have agreed to talk to us about that. We passed out our request for the fiscal year 2007 budget, which gives a summary of the budget and details about that. We believe we are doing pretty well. We're starting to pick up a good bit of business. We've got Fortune 100 company now and others. My COO is in Europe right now talking to a firm there that is considering us to do some of their development and moving their manufacturing to the state of Georgia. We have a great deal going on, and I believe that with some state funding, we're going after some federal funds as well, and with the money we can generate by helping our manufacturers in the state, the Hurley Foundation can be very successful. But again, with its strategic partners. And in closing, I mentioned that Hurley got started in the pulp and paper world, helping forest products, and that industry, we all know, has been not doing too well in the last couple of decades, last few years. We have been looking for a niche in the forest products world that we can play a major role in, and we've met with a number of industries and a national organization in forest products. Last week we determined that we are going to build a capability in the nanotech world, application of nanotechnology to the paper, the forest products industry, and we think we can do the most good at helping that industry out by adopting that technology capability. If you all have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them. We appreciate this opportunity to talk to you.
Anyone have any questions?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for the presentation. I read through the information earlier, and the more and more I thought about it, what I didn't see in here was private funds. Tell me this is not your full budget.
No, that's not the full budget. We will leverage that.
I need to know what the full budget is and how private funds are matching or doubling what we're showing here to keep the foundation going. Because foundations imply some public grants, however, mostly private funds for research and development of new products.
Yeah, I worked with OPB. We did a 5-year budget, and I will make that available to you. Now, this is only a fraction of what we're going to need to do what we're doing. Well, I'd like to initially. We would like to come close the first year to a 1-to-1 match, and then over the years we would increase that.
Anybody else? Yes, Ed. What number are you, 17?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How many employees do you have?
We have 38 at this time.
What percentage of in the operations of 333,000, what percentage of that is overhead?
That's a good question. With us, most of it is in the plant. I'd have to look at that. It ought to be about 10-15% in that area. But I'm going to have to look at that because we mix the overhead. Part of the administrators are working in the plant as well. So it's not all of us aren't 100% overhead, 100% administration rather.
May I continue, Mr. Chairman? thank you. You want $3,400,000?
Correct.
How much do you want next year?
That's for 2007.
Okay, how much you want for 2008?
It would be close to that amount again the next year, and then it would decrease after that.
I'm trying to. Is this going to be a continuation item?
I do not know.
Yeah, Hurley would need some help for the next 5 years, but they wouldn't need this amount of money every year.
Mr. Chairman, if I may make a statement, I just like, nothing against it, but I'd like something that shows a little bit more detail within the budget for that kind of long.
We'll send you give you the 5-year budget.
I had met with them several times, but
Okay.
they wanted to do a little presentation, and
Great.
I thought now would be the good time to do it.
Thank you, Mr.
I don't
Chairman.
think they've gotten any state funding since.
Not since 1999.
Any other questions? That's not Blueberry.
Well, yeah. You know, I don't think they do any blueberry research, but anyway, what you do does help. I know in my part of the state, south East Georgia, where we have a lot of timber and that kind of thing. My question is, or a request is, if you could bring us in some concrete, definite numbers of what you think you'll be able to match what you're asking us to do, I think that would help us in justifying, in our own minds, what we can do as far as the state money is concerned.
Right. Yes, and I have that, and I will, when I get back in the office, I'll send that to you.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Thank you for being here, and we'll start the 2007 in a couple of weeks. So.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you for coming. Okay, we're honored today to have the DOT Commissioner here, Mr. Harold Lenenko. This is the first time we've had his presence here in 2 years, right, Commissioner?
I believe that's right, Mr. Chairman.
We're honored you're here.
Well, thank you very much. As I understand it, y'all got it turned down.
I do now.
All right. Thought I was in my office. Now, as I understand it, I believe our Deputy Commissioner met with you folks earlier this week. I was in Washington and unable to be here, and I heard that y'all were meeting again. You might have some questions, so I came back from Washington to see if there's anything else that might be on y'all's mind that I might be able to answer. We do have the deputies here with me today as they are treasurer also.
Anybody have any questions? Contracts.
Okay.
Earl brought me a copy of them today, and I think that's and I'm handing them out right now, Commissioner. If I didn't hand mine out, here they are right here. I guess you have a copy of it in front of you?
Yes, sir, I do.
I'm going to let everybody get a copy of them. I think I asked you this question in the big hearing we had last week. Department of Law Litigation Services for construction claims, $900,000. Is that one claim or is that 10 claims? And if so, were the cases won or lost? Or do we know?
Well, as far as telling you if they won or lost, I'd like to say we won them all, but that is not one claim. We pay the Department of Law. They're our attorneys on all of our right-of-way cases, which we do have condemnation cases. We've got cases that do go to court. We've got other litigation cases that our folks also try when there's an incident on the road. Somebody may leave the road. We get sued for that. So we do contract with the Department of Law to be our attorney in those cases. We also have cases, though, with contractors where there are some issues that we can't settle through our contracting process that do go to law, go to a court case. So all of that is involved in our payments to the Department of Law.
Now, according to the law, is they bill you once they finish the case. Isn't that correct?
I don't know if is it afterwards.
some of the billing is done on a monthly basis, not after they're done, because it's ongoing litigation, so it's done on a reimbursement. The attorneys...
Earl, you need to come up here and speak on the mic because we're on...
I want you to hear this.
On the web. Glad to have you.
A lot of our litigation and our billing from the law office, we have ongoing activities, and it's done on a reimbursement basis. So as a result, the invoicing is submitted by the attorneys in detail down to, little stubs for making trips if they have to go out of town. So all that's done on reimbursement. It's submitted to the law office, and then they give us an invoice, but it's not always done on a completed basis. It could be done throughout the term of the litigation for each and every one project. That 900 is a specific contract for them to hire attorneys to assist us in all of our litigation in construction claims.
The Department of Law.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then they sub it out if they need to, correct?
As appropriate, yes, sir.
Okay. Any questions anybody else have on that? Next item I had was the Ventry Engineering Commissioner, Value Engineering Studies and Reports, U.S. Costs, Lewis and Zimmerman, GFP Consultant Services, acquire expertise and skill for engineering services. And there's a consultant down there for $750,097.
Yes. Acquire expertise and skill for engineering services.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like Ventry Engineering.
Yes, sir. From Ventry Engineering, U.S. Costs, Lewis and Zimmerman, those value engineering studies. Yes, sir.
What do they do?
You mean as far as what these studies are for?
Right.
Oh, I'm not sure what the studies are for. That's federal law. Okay. The federal highway or the bill through Congress requires any project that's above $25 million, we have to do a value engineering to check and make sure that the way we're doing the project is the correct way of doing it, or is the most economical way of doing the project.
Okay. So if we hire, or I shouldn't say we, when the DOT does a set of plans or engineers, the civil engineering, and they are a licensed engineer, we have to come back and make sure they're qualified or what?
Well, when we get, you're talking about when in the early stages of contracting?
Correct.
No, in the early stages of contracting, we contract out our consultant work for the design activities, if that's what you're talking about.
Right.
All of that is put out for bid. These contractors or these consultants have to be pre-qualified in order to submit a request for qualifications. They have to turn in or they have to submit that they are qualified. They have to prove that they're qualified.
So these folks do this for y'all?
Oh,
correct?
yes.
Okay.
Well, no, this right here is looking at when we get through with everything, we want to make sure that the process, the way we're doing the project, is the most economical way of doing the project. It may be staging the project. It may be the type construction projects or concrete versus asphalt, materials.
Gotcha.
It's a different way of doing things, yes.
Okay. And MTG coordinators, program coordinators in district offices, I know they're, how many district offices? We have 7?
We have 7 district offices.
And what do they do? What is that for?
What does the districts do?
MTG.
I'm trying to look at that. Program coordinators in district office.
Right.
I'm not sure what MTG coordinators. What
$415,000.
is it? 415 or is it 25? I can't see with my glasses. Yes, 415. That's the transit coordinators, where we have rural transit in somewhere around 86 to 90 of our counties. We have a transit program. We provide them the buses, the vans for that.
Right.
And we have
That's like the Red
coordinators.
Rabbit up in Hall County? Is that right, Tom? Okay. Gotcha. Yeah, we got a Red Rabbit. Let's see. Could be the Red Chicken.
Chicken moves faster
Okay, consultant research, acquire expertise and skill not available in the Department for Research and Studies, $4.8 million.
Yes, sir. We have consultants that help us out. I don't want to say that that we don't have the availability to do this work in-house, other than the fact of we don't have the enough people to do our work, the research work that we're doing. And in just about every one of our offices, we have consultants on board to help out in each of these areas. It may be asphalt research, it may be in environment location activities, it may be any of the activities within the department. But we hire consultants to help out and supplement our workforce.
Okay. Brown Protection Services, security for the TMC building.
Yes, sir. TMC building is our traffic management center that is over on Confederate Avenue, in conjunction with GEMA. That is, we do have to have security out there. That is a secured location. You would think that it's secured through the National Guard, but we also have security that we provide to get into the facility itself, just like these buildings.
Okay. URS, ITS, Operations and Support Project.
Yes, sir.
Just
ITS is our Intelligent Transportation Systems. That is the cameras you see on the road, the changeable message signs, the things such as this. That is and URS is a consulting firm that is very knowledgeable in that field, and they help us in developing the hardware, the software, what are we going to do on the next phases of developing ITS components.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Yes, Representative Forrester.
I was just curious if the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services and the consultant below it are doing the same thing. Combined, it's $4.7 million, because it says Ecology Services for the consultant, and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services and Environmental Review Services.
We have contracts with the consultant that's helping out over in our environment location office to move our environmental process through. We also help support staff members at the U.S. Fish and Wildlife and some other regulatory agencies. So our projects, when they get to them for project review, where we have to have permits to move our projects, they move our projects up to the front of the line, and they do those. They are working with these regulatory agencies, though. These two do not do the same thing.
Okay. Is that consultant, that's one consultant?
Well, it's a consulting firm. It may be several consulting firms, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ventry Engineering, U.S. Cost, Lewis and Zimmerman, they're all doing exactly the same thing.
They do the same operations, yes, sir. They're not working on the same project. They just do the same thing.
But totally, you over $5 million there. You just prefer not to let one of the vendors do it?
It's not a case of whether we want one to do it or not. A lot of our contracts are put out, a contract, say in March, a contract in July, a contract in October.
And they all bid the same thing?
They will bid on that, yes.
I just thought the dollar amounts being the same to three different companies.
Well,
typically that's
sure
looks strange.
Well, it's the same type work.
It's just an estimate.
Oh, they didn't do the work?
No. The dollar amounts that you see is just the budgeted amount. What they actually bid, when they actually bid and award the contract or the agreement, the dollar amount may be different from what you see budgeted. The budget is just an estimate of what these contractors may receive.
All right. May I continue, Mr. Chairman? Thank you so much. Acquire expertise and skill not available in the Department of Research. Now, is that an estimate of how much help you're going to need?
That's the consultant research, $4.8 million.
But is that an estimate?
Yes.
Are all of these estimates?
Yes, this is the budgeted amount.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. Have you done an in-house study on how much you could actually hire the people to do that for?
We can go back in-house and on the contracts that we have already put out, and we can tell you what those are. But as far as an in-house study, we've done a study to say it should cost us this much. That's how we develop our budget, to get the work done, and that's based on previous contracts of the same type work. But that's how we set our budget up. We may not need the full $4.8 million.
Yeah, earlier to the chairman's questioning, you said we have some people that we just don't have them on staff to be able to do this for what you anticipate to be $4.8 million. My question is, can you hire someone to be able to do what your anticipated needs are for less than $4.8 million?
We have not gone there, and because we can't get the staff numbers, we can't get our personal services raised up with positions to do what you're talking about. We're limited on how many people we can hire. We've got to go out and get our consultants. So it's not a question of whether whether we can do it cheaper or not. We don't have the positions to do it.
I have a couple of questions. The first one, if we represent a rural county that would like to get one of these Red Rabbit, I believe he called it, buses to get our people around, what's the procedure we go through to request that?
There's a 5311 program. That is the transit program. It's administered through our Office of Intermodal Programming, and probably you already have that. But they work with the RDCs down there, and we can certainly get you the whatever information you need as far as to get signed up for that. But we do have somewhere in the neighborhood of 85 to 90. The last check, we have between 85 and 90 counties that are taking advantage of that now.
Thank you. The other thing is under this item of high-speed rail study. I know at one time, a few years back, we had a strong push to get a train line down to Macon and then eventually to Savannah or Jessup down that way, or Albany. That has sort of slowed back down in the last year or two. We hadn't had the emphasis on that rail project, but I wondered if you could just briefly give us an idea of the outcome of this high rail study and where we stand on getting rail transportation between Atlanta and Macon.
Okay. Two different things you're talking about there. The high-speed study is not the same as the inner-city study that's going down to Macon and then further on down to Jessup or Albany down that way.
Two different questions, really.
It is. Where we're at on that particular study is finished. We started it, probably 10, 12 years ago. It identified routes, and now we're looking into the implementation of that. The first leg of that is the one that you've heard about going down toward Macon, but stopping at Lovejoy because that's all the money we've got right now. Mm-hmm. The high-speed rail is one that's coming out of Washington. It's coming down through Charlotte, coming down through Atlanta, and heading on down into New Orleans. There's some funds set up in Washington to set up to do a study, and we've got to put money in there to match that study. All federal dollars have to be matched. And that is right now, that program or that high-speed rail is coming to Charlotte. Now, all we need to do is cross the little state of South Carolina, that tip of that, and get it into Atlanta. We need to get that on down in here, and that's what this study is for, is to get it all the way down through North Carolina, South Carolina, and into Georgia. We are ready on our side, and we're asking for funds, we're budgeting funds, to fund that study part in Georgia. Now, I can't address the study part that's in South Carolina or the part that is North Carolina. They're going to have to put their money in to match those federal dollars in their part of the state. But that study is to determine, is it feasible to run high-speed rail from Washington all the way through Atlanta, through Charlotte, through Atlanta, and on down to New Orleans?
And how will that compare to Amtrak that we currently have?
It is a higher speed. The speeds of these routes will get up somewhere in the neighborhood of 79. I don't believe they'll reach in the 105 range, but that is a high speed range in there. The Amtrak doesn't do that. Now, there is an Amtrak line that does come down. Matter of fact, there's one that comes down through the Jessup area down into Jacksonville. But it's different in that it is a higher quality, faster route.
Any other questions?
Commissioner, question and a comment on, I noticed Goodwill Industries is a vendor for training women in construction.
Yes, sir.
Nothing against women at all. Is that a program set up to bring women in the workforce?
It does. It brings women into the workforce. It also gives them training. It is something we have been involved in for several years now. It's a very good program, but it does. It brings women into the workforce and really brings them into skill areas that they're really just not accustomed to. Some of your more of a mechanical skill type thing, operators of heavy equipment on the roadway, things like this. Now, that's where we use them. Now, that Goodwill Industry trains them for other activities also. Okay. It's just for our benefit. We get them into skill areas that they're just not quite accustomed to. You're not accustomed to seeing them.
I know it's probably an equal opportunity, but as far as the male population, you have trouble getting folks for this job, or is this something that men normally are not adapted, can do other things besides what these are trained for? Well,
it's a real good question. The issue with us, though, we do have high turnover. If we're talking about, say, that area where we're talking about truck driver type or equipment operator type, we have high turnover in those areas because with our salaries, even with our benefits that we have in the state, county governments, contractors, we get a little bit of training. They get the training under the belt with us, and they will jump over in a heartbeat. And those equipment operators is our biggest loss, biggest turnover we have.
A comment is about Representative Reiner is talking about the consultant cost and so forth. Mm-hmm. I think you recall we came down with our local governments, and I asked you the question. Maybe they were hiring outside consultants to do work on a local level, and I asked maybe DOT could furnish some of that, and you told me at that time, y'all were covered up. You'd love to do it, but you just didn't have the manpower to do it for local governments well as some of this other
We've
stuff.
got the expertise. We just don't have enough people to do it all. And we're consulting out right now. We're consulting out about 55% of our work. We just do not. Even construction inspection is consulted out in each of our 7 districts.
Oh, thank you. Commissioner, I had 2 questions. One, on the contracts list, where it shows consultant, is there a reason we don't have the name of who the consultant is?
Well, as a budgetary, it's just a budget item where we put in, we're going to hire a consultant in here. Some of these folks are consultants. When you look up there at the 4th and the 5th line down, the 6th line down, those are individual consultants. Okay. But for the most part, it's a budgetary item for the broad field of consultant to do a certain thing.
I understand. Thank you. And then the county contract is about a little further halfway down. Airport planning. Do you know which airport that is, or is that just?
That is all 102. Well, there's 103 publicly owned. 102 of them are included in our operations, and we do some planning activities. We work with local governments on this. Some RDCs get involved in this, but that's all of the 102 Hartsville is taken out of that.
Is the number, do you see it to be 30,000, or am I reading that wrong?
I think if I can read across, I think you're correct. 30,000, that is correct.
$30,000. All right. Thank you very much.
Well, now, this is not planning. Are you planning an extension on a particular runway, and it's going to be so many feet, so wide, and things like that? This is the planning study to determine needs at these airports. Yeah. 102. The only public airport is Hartsfield-Jackson. We do not have money go through us.
You, Representative Barnes?
Yes, sir. sort of brought from Representative Scheid's comment or question. The contractors that are listed, is this contracts we already have in place that we're paying them into 2007, or do we just assume they're going to win so many contracts from us? The example with the value engineering studies, Venture Engineering, U.S. Costs, and Lewis Zimmerman, do we assume that they're just going to win this much, or is this payment into 2007 for contracts that they have?
No, I couldn't answer that. Earl, you've got the answer.
Well, several of these activities.
Earl, you're going to need to
have
come
to
up
come
here.
back up here.
Just stay up there, Earl.
What it boils down to is some of these are continuing type contracts, and we know after we've actually done a procurement, in other words, we do a solicitation, RFP, and we'll make a selection, and then they'll come to the budget office and they'll ask for funding of it, because those are things that are mandated that we don't have a choice doing. Some of the ones that say consultant to do some of these activities to supplement our workforce, and I'll just grab one easy where it says pedestrian design guide training. You know, we're putting together this type of a pedestrian guide, and before they would go and do that solicitation, they're going to make sure that it's going to be funded by the budget office. So when you see consultant out there, they have not done the RFP or the procurement process. They're asking, is there money to do it first? And if it is, then they'll go ahead and go through the procurement process. So we show just consultant. If it's a mandated deal and it's a continuation, we'll end up doing the process, and then before they can make an award, they'll go ahead and get budget approval, and that's why you'll see individual names on some of the other ones. But it is more of a budget tracking document, but it combines both forward-moving projects as well as projects that have gone through the procurement process, and we're waiting to do an award based on budget approval.
So the ones that have the consultants listed, there's been an award, or there's been a contract won, and you're just waiting to award for
It'll be for that amount, and the budget's already said that we're going to go ahead and set up this much money for this contract to the city of Brunswick, again, as an example, or Glenn County, or any of the U.S. Coast Guard or something.
Or Kissinger, Campo,
or Kissinger, or any of those people.
It's
right.
like you know that they've already won the bid.
Right. Sometimes.
But now we got to fund it through the budget.
Right. Because we've gone through the process, because it's not an optional activity. Some of these activities we're going to go ahead and do because it's continuation work. So we're going to go ahead and do a contract, find out what the amount is, and then go ahead and make a budget commitment, encumber those dollars directly to that contract, and then make the award once the budget has been approved.
So this is not an estimation.
Not all of them are estimations, no. But again, these are maximum contracts amount. In that sense, they're an estimate, but these are really contract amounts for the most part. If it's a blank amount and it's a consultant, and we have not done the procurement, the RFP out there, it may be an estimate at that point.
Okay, well, let me strike quick to the chase here. So if there was need for money, say, in Department of Agriculture for their new vehicles, and I look here and I see, hey, $4.8 million for a consultant. Would there be a problem with the contract you already have for me to say, I need to take $100,000 out of this 4.8 to be able to fund my Commissioner of Agriculture's purchase of some vehicles?
Yeah, because
Big problem. Big problem. It's not motor fuel tax. Motor fuel tax can be used for roads and bridges and the items to support roads and bridges.
So nothing out of these
Department of
contracts.
Agriculture cannot use a dime of motor fuel tax. Not the way the law is in Georgia. So you can't pull motor fuel tax to put it into another agency like you're talking about. That would be the problem.
Okay. So, but there wouldn't be a problem saying, well, 4.8 is too much, maybe just 4 million. And then that 800,000 not going anywhere.
But let me explain on one thing on the research, to be clear on it. There's a large component. There's two components of research money. We get planning and research and and true research. This money is usually ran through the Georgia Tech Research Institute. I'm not saying all of it is going there. And what we do is we contract with them to do a lot of research that is done at the college, the graduate, and doctoral level, where they're doing a lot of studies that we would not hire PhDs and other people from the academic community to do this type of research as pure research people at the DOT. Where we actually do applied engineering, where they do the actual research stuff. So that's an amount that we would do lots of contracts and a lot of special research projects for them with the Georgia Tech Research Institute for the most part. But it encompasses two things, and again, at that point, this is a combination of different sources of dollars. It's not always, like some of it where we saw the aviation, that could be general fund dollars, because again, we can't use motor fuel on it. Less than 0.5% of our total budget is general fund appropriated. The rest of it's motor fuel or federal dollars. So some of this is also federal dollars that's being pushed through this system in contracts. That's what we were asked to get. But some of these are federal dollars and not even motor fuel dollars.
Okay, so wouldn't it be best to show this committee what funds are general funds and what funds are federal dollars and what funds are motor fuel tax? Otherwise, you're showing me a budget request and you're saying I can't change it.
Well, I think, just to be clear, we weren't trying to do a budget request. We were asked to supply this information, and we can sort it any way the committee would like us to do that, but we were just asked to get up our contracts that fit in the contract class in the line item for contracts.
Okay.
And that's all we were doing. We're not asking for really a request, because this money is already appropriated.
Appropriated, right. Okay, that makes more sense.
Okay.
Anybody? Ed?
I'm sorry. I'm learning, and I appreciate your patience with me so much. I am concerned, however, that on the question of the consultants. Now, I didn't pull out the Palm Pilot and do the math, but this is $43 million, and the quick running off the top of my head to the 14 things that talk about consultants is worth about $17-18 million. And I'm looking for that good old American checks and balances. What happens? If the consultant comes in and says, you know what, last year we did it for $5 million, this year we got to do it for $6 million, because their own business isn't perhaps as good as it was a year ago. And you're telling me that, golly, we just can't get in there and hire it for ourselves. And I don't understand the reasons why we can't. But I'm wondering if we're doing enough self-examination to make sure that we're getting the most bang out of our buck in those hirings for those consultants. Because you'd like to be able to pave more roads.
If you let me address that.
Sure.
When we do these type of contracts, before we would just go ahead and issue a contract, we go through a procurement process. And usually, since they're consultants' activities, and some are vendor and they supply us, and it could be a fixed rate, but most all these things would be done through a cost proposal type of arrangement. And what we would do is, once we shortlist a group of consultants, before we would make an award after doing the RFP, we would then ask the preferred consultant to give us what we call a cost proposal. The cost proposal outlines the reasonableness of them doing the work. Whether or not they have all these other reasons that would increase it really doesn't mean a whole bunch to us. They have to have a CPA audited overhead rate. We don't just say that they've got additional costs because they moved into a new building or they've got new additional phone calls or phone equipment. No, it's a CPA audited overhead that complies with the FAR, the Federal Acquisition Regulations of the federal government, whether it's state or federal, because we think it's more stringent. Once we look at the cost proposal, then we'll look at, is there a reasonableness of the right number of staff, and then at that point we go back and we negotiate where we think that it is unreasonable or unacceptable. And if they have something that cannot be qualified under the federal regulations, that's not allowable expense, we would reject that. So all of our projects and contracts go through that process both engineering and non-engineering activities.
Yes, sir. You do expect the consultant to make a profit.
Yes, and that's part of, and that's allowable under the federal guidelines.
And when I read, because we don't have skill in-house, I'm wondering is if we went out and tried to find that skill, and maybe we have, but a constant review, would we be able to keep some of that profit in-house to be able to do more for the citizens of Georgia? Thank you.
And I think the commissioner was right, if you don't mind me make that comment. A lot of it is driven as much by not having the positions and being able to fulfill those technical expertise. And you are right that if we did have those people, we could keep the profit. However, attracting and retaining those people at those salary levels is so competitive, because some of these things in the ecology area and a couple of these other areas are so special niche areas that we just can't attract them and even hire them to begin with, no less retain them. So it's a battle that we're continually working on. And, we have a staff that evaluates positions for that one reason, because it's tough to get these special niche technology jobs.
One more, if I may, Mr. Chairman. At what percentage of this would you consider any state consultant dependent? This 10-year budget was $43 million, and there was $38 million in consultants. Would you say that it was consultant top heavy? I mean, I don't know what other states do.
I think what we do is not uncharacteristic of a lot of other DOTs. There has been a move in the last decade or so toward outsourcing to consultants, because that's where the expertise is residing. These people come in and they get their basic training from Georgia DOT or from Tennessee or some other DOT, and as soon as they get enough basics, they end up opting to move into the consulting world, because they'll pay a higher premium.
Florida's about 90%.
Yes.
Commissioner, did you have your light on? Okay. Excuse me.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I've kind of looked at it in the way of, I see a lot of consultants on there, but I think the Department of DOT should go out and let the private sector come in and do the consulting, because that frees our department up to do the management and looking after the projects and make sure the designs are done. And we just had a design build last year that lets private industry come in, and then we had PPI last year. So personally, it doesn't bother me too much to see consultant on there, as long as we're keeping a watchful eye and knowing that we're getting the bang for the buck, I guess you'd say. So that's all I'd like to say about it.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes, Representative Lufkin. Go ahead.
Mr. Commissioner, I appreciate you guys being here, and this has nothing to do with your budget, but I understand from the Assistant Commissioner, Chairman Smith, myself, and the Speaker will be excited. Here we have 2 flex lanes going in, one at 985 and one at 685, 75? Or is it a flux lane, since you took part of the auxiliary lane as well? But I just want to tell you, we appreciate you being open-minded and looking at that idea.
Well,
And we're hoping that it works out well.
well, I think it's going to work very well.
I just want to say thanks, sir.
One question at number 11. On this issue of consultants, there's one thing I wanted to get clear in my own mind. I believe you said that, and I understand why you have to have, sometimes they can save a lot of money because you have such specialized areas that they deal in all the time. But I believe you said that even if you saw where you could save some money, that you didn't have the positions that you could expand. And my question is, what if you found some areas where you could save some money by expanding your positions, what does the General Assembly need to do to allow you to expand your positions?
I guess raise that number up a little bit higher.
So we set that number, the legislature sets that number?
It is set, I think, at OPB.
What?
I think it is set at OPB.
And it's approved during the annual appropriations, the same number.
We do have latitude, though, within our department and operating the department. If we need take some positions that we have, maybe they're vacant in a design area and we need them out in our environment location office, we can move. We've got the latitude to move some of our positions if we can fill them. But as Earl has said, a lot of times, just to be competitive, we can't be competitive with the outside consulting world, and the cost, the salaries that we pay, we could not be competitive.
I understand that. I just wanted to be, if there were some areas where you saw you could be competitive, I wanted to be sure that you would be able to take advantage of that.
Sure, we certainly would.
One last thing, Mr. Chairman. I'm sure all of us in this room have to, from time to time, bring our county officials in to see the commissioner and for roads and what have you, and it can be a very intimidating process. I came here in 1979, and I have served under some commissioners that made it more intimidating than they needed to. But I will say that our present commissioner, even though he doesn't always give us what we need, is always very kind to our elected officials and very courteous and make them feel at ease in your office, and I want to thank you for that.
Thank you.
Mr. Commissioner, and I'm on. Mr. Commissioner, I just wanted to commend you for having one of the best road systems in the United States. And I've been travel a good many places and meet with other state officials, and everybody brags on Georgia's roads, and I think you've done a good job. Just one question I wanted to ask. I heard just a few days ago that the DOT board voted to realign the way the funds are going in congressional districts, and is that anything true to that? Is
the realignment or the how money goes into the congressional districts?
Right.
You and your colleagues have done that. Our board has no responsibility in that. What we do to take the projects to our board, we do a balancing ourselves, working with local governments, the MPOs, and working with local governments to establish their programs. We will then move projects into the program, but it's based on the balancing formula that you and your colleagues have already set up. The board just approves the adding of projects and the moving when they're ready, but it all has to be in line with the balancing bills that you folks have already addressed.
Commissioner, I think that was most of my colleagues and not me. But I would like to say, how will that affect the rural areas of Georgia?
Well, all of the congressional districts get, if I'm not mistaken, it's 80% of the available dollars. 80% of it now is balanced out over the 13 congressional districts. Now, 20% of it is at the discretion of addressing projects of need. Now, that's not just a lot of folks in the rural areas think, well, that's in the Atlanta area, and it's not. You're looking at bridges like a bridge like down on the coast, the bridge down at Brunswick that was just done. That bridge cost $128 million. Well, that project would never have gotten done, and that's not in the Atlanta area, but it would have never gotten done if you followed that 80% rule, not by doing that one and then anything else in that congressional district. So, but it's a good bill. I think you folks have really addressed the need there because you have put 80% of it being split up equally amongst those congressional districts.
Thank you, Commissioner, for that information.
Chairman Williams?
One last question.
Yes, sir.
I want to commend you for the job y'all do. We've got one of the best departments, I think, in the country. And your response to local needs I really appreciate that, and the reception they get, they're impressed with it. And I've thought the same thing that Representative Smith thought about hiring more staff. But looking at it, in some of those areas, aren't there these consultants have a niche that you don't need them all the time. If we went and hired more overhead, it's going to be more expensive than maybe use this guy for a one-time shot rather than hire him full time.
That's right, and we've looked at that along with other DOTs around the country. When you hire somebody to do a specific project or you hire them to do a specific thing, well, do you need them after that job is completed? And that's what a lot of folks are facing. And you're 100% correct. When that, I would rather have not just to answer your question. I think we could do it cheaper. I really do.
That's the point, and I'm just concerned with how often you look to do that.
Yeah,
and I know you do a great job.
Yeah, we have looked at that for years. I think we can. But what do we do with those folks when we get through with them? If they're a consultant and they get through, I turn them loose.
Any other questions? Commissioner, we're honored you're with us today.
Oh, I
Answered a lot
appreciate,
of hard
I
questions.
appreciate the time.
And,
Thank you.
Earl, good.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for the information. Okay, economic, if the Hurley people want to leave, they're welcome to leave. Don't feel like you have to stay, but economic development, Charlie, you want to come up and...
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Charlie Gatlin, the Chief of Staff for the Georgia Department of Economic Development. Commissioner Lesser was here, I think, yesterday morning and did our department budget presentation, and hopefully he's answered a lot of the questions for you as far as the department is concerned. I have one item I wanted to bring before the committee. You may recall last year the governor had asked for the legislature to approve $50 million, to authorize $50 million in the GO bond issue, which is in the current budget. And we did that in anticipation of some major projects that we were going to have. The bad news is that we underestimated what our opportunities were going to be this year. And so we've got to come back and ask for another GO bond issue. The governor wants to do that. Mr. Chairman, I've shared with you, and I know you have a sheet there that outlines these major projects. There are actually 4 projects on that list.
Everybody should have a copy.
Right. The $50 million authorization that's already been done actually covers, as we are anticipating now, about 2.5 of those 4 projects. And so we have a couple of other major projects that have come in that are going to need GO bond funding that we didn't know about back then, and so now we're faced with having to ask for more, and again in the amended budget, because the funds are going to be needed relatively quickly for these projects, for these other projects that have come up. We're going to have to ask for, again, this is an upside estimate. It's a number that's outside instead of conservative, because we don't want to underestimate and then have to come back and ask you again. So this is an upside estimate of $75 million that would provide funds for all 4 of these projects. The first one is a done deal, the Toyo Tire plant, which is in Cartersville, Georgia. It is already constructed and in production. And so that's a done deal. The other 3 are in negotiations, I'll put it that way, and so they're not done deals yet. The state would acquire these, in the case of these projects, basically the property, so it would be a capital asset that the state would own. And again, this is under negotiation, so these things are subject to change, but we think these projects will be negotiated, and the negotiations will be completed in the next couple of months. So we're going to have another authorization in order to do what the governor would like to do and the commissioner would like to do with these projects, these major projects.
So this is additional $75 million that you need.
Yes.
In
Yes.
the supplemental 06. Any questions from anybody? Okay. Anybody? All right.
I noticed that the fund you're talking about is needed in 2005, which is already passed. Is this needed by May of 2005, March, July? June?
Those are typographical errors. It should be 6. I'm sorry. We are in 6, aren't we?
Yeah, we are.
Calendar year.
Good. Okay.
Anybody else? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We'll hand out the budget documents right now. I think we're finished. PSC, did y'all need to say anything else?
Yes, sir.
I certainly appreciate it. Commissioner Irvin expressed a few months ago, and I apologize, I was in an additional meeting at the time when you were here last, and we were talking about, and I don't know if the question came up, and the chairman can probably clarify this for me, our National Guard, and Commissioner Irvin had mentioned that he was willing to allow the National Guard to use a portion of the market bulletin so that the Guard member families could put stories in there talking about the Guard families. Has that issue came up for you? Have we made allowances in your budget for that, or are we just going to kind of rob a half a page here and there?
I have not heard any mention of that. I would assume that that's something that we can incorporate into our resources as they currently are.
You don't anticipate, with the mailing list not changing and the printing cost hopefully wouldn't change.
Right.
Okay, and that's my only question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Before you run off, let me ask you, I'm sorry, I can't remember your name.
I'm Sherry Forrest.
Yeah, Sherry. Go back to the mic. Item 34 on the tracking, replace 50 vehicles. I know last year, did you get vehicles or not? I can't remember.
No, sir. The last year we had funding for vehicles was fiscal year 2003.
2003.
Yes, sir.
How many vehicles y'all got in the department?
We're authorized to have 295. Currently, we're operating with about 239.
Okay. Think about half of them could limp until June the 30th?
This is based on our projections for mileage, and as of June 30th, we're projecting this many to actually exceed 150,000 miles.
Okay, these are the agents out in the fields?
Yes,
checking?
sir, our field inspectors.
Okay.
Some of them are specialty vehicles that have special equipment that, you know, an inspector can't operate his personal vehicle because of equipment that has to be installed on the vehicle.
Okay. Yeah. What do you?
Yes, ma'am. A lot of these vehicles, do they stay here or stay at the office, at district office or wherever they are, and they use their private vehicle, and then or do they take these vehicles home every night?
No, well, the employees that are assigned vehicles are not located at an office. They are inspectors. They leave from home in the mornings, go directly to whatever facilities they are inspecting, and then return home at night. So they do not operate out of an office except their home. So there's no commuting involved.
Is there any kind of rule in the department saying that once your hours you're through, those vehicles aren't to be used, or are they instructed, or do we know if they're used after hours for personal use?
State policy is vehicles should be used only for state business, and they do have reports that they are required to fill out as far as where they travel to, the mileage, things like that.
Okay, thank
you. And this is $40,000 per vehicle, correct?
Approximately. Again, some of them are sedans, which would be less than that, but there are some trucks that are larger and would be upwards of $70,000 to $80,000.
Okay. Anybody else? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. You're better looking than Commissioner.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I was lost in New York last year. First time I'd ever been, it's about farthest north I've ever been. And I happened to be in a cab, and I asked him, I says, what's the number of miles before you get a new cab? I know it's not a scientific inquiry, but their response was, it's not even up for negotiation until it reaches 200,000. And that was idle chit-chat late at night, but I just thought that was kind of curious. And my boy's 97 Ford 150 is still doing pretty good, way after 135,000. I'd like to make a motion we cut this in half, sir.
Okay. Motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Number 12.
Okay. Chairman, I used to be assistant commissioner of agriculture a few years ago, and I do know that they had a lot of rough areas to go sometimes, and some of the I don't know of any commissioner that's been more conservative in making a dollar go farther than Tommy Irvin. I know the fact that he was so conservative sometimes didn't pay his employees as much as they ought to be making. And it's probably the reason I'm not still there. But anyway, I would say that he has done an excellent job in trying to be conservative, and I really don't think he would ask for vehicles he didn't need.
What do you want to do? Are you doing that in a substitute motion?
Right.
Okay, I got a substitute motion to repeat your motion again.
I move that we fund the recommended funding for the automobiles to the Department of Agriculture.
Do I hear a second? Do I hear a second? No, motion fails. So we're back to the 50. You want to repeat it again, Representative Reinders? And
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Previous motion of replacing 50 vehicles, move that number down to 25 and a half, sir.
okay. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Motion carries. And I think Representative Reese has a concern.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The commissioner presented a request in addition to what was in the governor's recommendation for the poultry lab located in Oakwood, requesting liquid handling system, a basic system, maintenance and programming for $170,000. They have also provided us additional information that there are other options that can be added for another $120,000 that would allow it to run 24/7 with no staff in attendance. I would like to make the motion that we go ahead in the 06 budget and fund the basic handling system of $170,000 for the poultry lab.
Okay. Got a motion. I hear a second.
Second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign? Okay. Did you say no, Representative Reinders? You did? Don't you have a poultry lab in Dalton? I thought you did. Okay. Got one opposed. Okay. What else we need to do, Ag? Anything? Anything else for that, Representative Reese? Okay. I think so, if I remember right. Wasn't that all that was needed at this time?
Additional request, they asked for $10,000 additional for their weights inspection process, the automated. And then I've already added it up, but I think it's 45, no, 175 addition for the food processing inspection.
That's on the tracking document now, right?
Yeah, they had asked for additional funds. They had requested this in 07, but the governor moved it to 06 and didn't give them what they fully requested for it.
Okay. Now, what were those amounts again?
The weights inspection, they'll need to take the 105, which is in the current tracking document, to 115.
Okay.
So it's $10,000. And then the food safety inspection needs to go from 245 to 392 to 236.
Okay. Any discussion on that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Yeah.
You opposing? Okay.
I do too.
Two opposed. Okay. Motion carries.
Chairman, we'll back with the governor's recommendation.
Okay. Community affairs. Yeah, I didn't give. Community affairs didn't need to say anything, did we? Okay. Any comments on the community affairs? What's the flavor of the committee here? I got some money in there for economic development. Yeah. I think everybody's for critical economic development projects.
I'm moving. Pass it over.
Okay. Got a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign. Okay. And we got the bond part of it. You want to go ahead and do the bond part of it? Isn't that, Charlie, on the amended? Yeah, it's got to be on the amended. Okay. Motion?
Second.
All in favor say aye. Any opposed, like sign. Okay. Forestry. Ken's still here too, so. There again, we're talking about 18 vehicles. Of course, I know it's all critical too. Do what? Yeah, we did. Representative Ray, you want to?
I move that we pass it as recommended.
Okay. Anybody? Second. All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Okay. Public Service Commission. I know there's a fuel case coming up between now and June the 30th, and as mandated by law, we have to put some money in there to help them for their third-party witnesses, or is that correct? Okay. And I think the amount was $50,000. Isn't that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Anybody? Any discussion about that? We don't have much choice in funding that on these fuel cases.
How do we, Mr. Chairman, how do we determine the amount?
They told me that's what they need. Yeah. Okay, I got a motion. I hear a second. Okay. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign. Soil Water Conservation Commission. Okay. All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Travel expenses. That's right, they had that vehicle, didn't they? How many miles they got on it?
It was a Ford Aerostar.
It's two of them, wasn't it?
They had Aerostar. That was international.
Oh, international.
What is that jump to? 120?
Well, we
Do we have the details on that?
I have a breakdown.
Do you want her to read them out? Can she read them out real quick? Can we go into another one and let her come back to it?
Well, we got the bond package in there. I'd rather let the Green Door deal with it myself if they want to do it. Okay.
Can you just send it on without recommendation back?
Yeah.
Without putting it down?
Yeah.
I just make a motion that we send it on with recommendation without those.
We already have.
Can I speak on them?
Okay.
Speak on with them somewhere?
Probably is.
Where are you going, John?
Transportation.
Now, we finished the soil water, right?
Yeah.
There was no additional anything, okay. Okay. Department of Transportation. Pretty complex.
Chairman, I think they justified their request and all that. Make a motion.
I second that, Chairman.
Okay. Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign? Okay. Motion carries. Does that take care of everything now? Okay. Thank y'all for being here. Sorry it went a little over time, but
Want us to get that report ready so you can sign it?
you gonna do it now?